This week could be a pivotal week for the market. We have the FOMC announcement and J-Powell press conference this Wednesday, and the market is watching this pivotal level near 5,800. In this weekly S&P 500 analysis, we'll analyze the price action, the market internals, and the market-generated information to see what the S&P 500 might do if it comes up to this pivotal 5,800 level. Stay tuned. So far for the month of May, all the major indexes are in the green, and the S&P 500 actually made a high that exceeded last month's high. And last week, all the major indexes also finished in the green. And for year to date, only the New York Stock Exchange Composite is in the green, but all the other major market indexes are making a comeback and try to recover all its losses for the year to date. And on this daily chart of the S&P 500, we see that the S&P 500 actually came back above this 30-day moving average cloud, and it is trying to come up to this 5,800 level. So we're going to talk about this a little bit more detail later on. And for the Dow Jones Industrial, it is still a way off from this pivot high comparing to the S&P 500. And the New York Stock Exchange Composite is getting close to coming back up to this 30-week moving average. And also, it is a little bit distant from this pivotal level here. While the Nasdaq 100 look very similar to the S&P 500, which should be no surprise to us because a lot of the Magnificent Seven, or all of the Magnificent Seven stock, is a component of the S&P 500. But the small cap, the Russell 2000, is still a way off from this pivotal level here, so there's still a lot more room or a lot more ground to go recover here for the Russell 2000. Although it is making a move above this 30-day moving average cloud, again, it still have quite a bit to go before it come up to this pivotal level here near the 2100. And the transportation, the Dow Jones Transportation, although it came up a bit, but it still have a problem of hitting this resistance. So unless it could get back above this resistance level here, then maybe there would be a chance for it to come up to test this pivotal level at 15,000. But still, the transportation looked quite weak. Now let's take a look at the price action, the daily chart on the S&P 500. Remember last week we were talking about this 5,500 level. We're saying if it could get above this 5,500 level, then we could see the possibility of moving up here into this 5,700 zone here, and that would be in line with the upper range of the weekly expected move. And as you can see, on Friday, actually got above this upper range and slightly above the zone here. So, our zone is ballpark value. So as far as, we could look at this thing as being hitting the zone right near that 5,700. But regardless, remember we were talking about to look for the gap fill. Right? Either we come down and fill this gap or come up and fill this gap. So you can see that it actually came up and filled this gap here, right? It's last week. So right now, we basically saw what the market was pricing in, and it was targeting that upper range. And now we are looking at the market is pricing in the upper range up above the 5,800 level, right? So here's one possibility, one clue that gives us that the market expectation is it could get up to this 5,800 level in the coming week if it come up and tag the upper range of the expected move. Now, also, it could come back down and retest the 5,500 level, that zone, if the market decides to get rejected up at this 5,700 level, and get rejection and push it back down. So that is the possibility on the downside. So again, basically, we are looking at that possibility, at least the market expectation is that it could get up to that 5,800 in the coming week if we see a positive reaction either to the FOMC meeting or some other news, or maybe tariff, China and United States negotiation, trade talk, and that kind of stuff. So just be prepared. At least the market is pricing in that possibility. Now let's take a look at the ES, the E-mini S&P 500. Once again, the market is pricing in for it to come up and take out this pivot high. You know, the upper range is somewhere around 58.40 and 58.28.50. And the lower range is between 55.92.50 and 55.35. So definitely the market is pricing in that possibility of come up and test this pivot high here near the 58.50 area. So that is one possibility. Now, if it get rejected, then we basically are looking for this thing to come back down into this 5,500 area, you know, this zone here. So that's that 5,500, and we could see the possibility come back down and basically retest this particular pivot high. Or, you know, if it could stay above this 5,700 area, you know, basically this 5650 zone here, and if we could stay above this price zone, then we could see this thing to come up and try to take out this high, or at least come and tag this high where everybody is keeping an eye on, especially on the S&P 500, 5800 area. Now, the previous week, I know a lot of market participants looking at the possibility of breaking this trend line and that sort of thing, and it's going to be a positive move. So we did get a positive move out of the area there, you know, on the, you know, basically moving up. And right now, we're basically sitting here at this 566 or near the 570 zone. So once again, the market is pricing in for it to come up and take out this pivot high here in the coming week if it could come up to the upper range, because the market is pricing in the upper range to be between 580 and 578.80. So the lower range is between 554.70 and 550. So once again, if it could come up, then it will take out this pivot high. If it get rejected from this 570 zone, then it'll come back down and retest this 550. Now let's take a look at the NQ, the E-mini Nasdaq 100 future. You see last week, it also came up and tagged this 20,100 area. You know, this zone basically come up to this 20,000 zone and this upper range here and close right inside or near this top of the range here. So right now, we're basically looking at the possibility of come up and tag this, you know, pivot high here somewhere around 20,000. Let's see what that number is, 20,500 area. So we're basically looking for that possibility to come up and tag this number. And here, looking at what the market is pricing in, actually pricing in it to come up and exceed this high, because it's pricing in the upper range between 20,750 and 20,695.25. So it's basically somewhere around 20,750 on the upside. On the downside, basically coming back down to this 19,600 area. So it's between 19,713.75 and 19,500. So those are upper range and the lower range for the weekly expected move. So once again, if it could remain above this 20,000, then we could possibly see the Nasdaq or the NQ come up and take out this pivot high and move up into this upper range at the 20,750 area. Now, if we get rejected and unable to stay above that 20,000 level, then we'd be looking for this thing to come back down and possibly come down, you know, basically back to this 19,500 area, this zone here, and come down and test this breakout pivot high here at near the 19,500. And looking at the triple Q, the QQQ, you see that it came up to the upper range between 490 and 487.40 last week and came up to this 490 zone. So we're getting close to this pivot high here. So once again, you know, basically keeping our eye on this pivot high. And we saw the NQ, the market is actually pricing in the upper range to be higher than this pivot high here. So let's see what the market is pricing in for the QQQ. Here we see the market is actually pricing in close to this 510 zone here. The upper range is between 503.50 and 501.10. And the lower range is 476.50 and 472.50. So what we're going to be watching is to see what it be able to get above or maintain, you know, above this 490 area And if it could, then we're basically looking at this pivot high to get taken out and move up into the 500 area and possibly come up to this 510 zone. Now, if it get rejected and pushed back from this 490, then we are looking not just come down to this low range. My suspicion is that they're going to come back down to this 470 zone. So we're going to come back and basically test this pivot high here, somewhere around that 470 area. So looking at what the market is pricing in for the NQ, the ES, the SPY, the QQQ, and also the S&P 500 cash index, it appears that the market is pricing in for the possibility to come up and tag that 5,800 level. So let's go and check out the pulse of the market, the sentiment and the internal, and see what they are telling us in terms of the probability for the market to come up and take out that 5,800 in the coming week. Let's take a look at the sentiment chart here. We see that the sentiment, the VIX came down again. So right now it's approaching this 20 level. Remember, we're talking about this zone here. This is a caution zone for the the market participant. So they definitely went from a fear or a little bit of a panic zone above that 30 level back into this zone between 20 and 30. And look at the put-call ratio. The put-call ratio is also below 0.75. Remember when we say once it is entering in the range of 0.75 and 1, this basically is the more of a hedge zone. The market participants are not bearish per se, but it's not bullish as well. But it's very cautious and want to set up some hedge to protect their position. But once you get below 0.75, then the market participants are quite bullish because they are buying more calls now. So they are betting on the stock or the market going up more than it's coming down. So this is a bullish stance here. And with the VIX coming down, although it is still above the 20, but that is also a slightly positive in the term of bullishness. So definitely the sentiment, the market participants are turning a little bit positive, a little bit more bullish right now. And looking at the put-call ratio and also the up-down volume ratio for the New York Stock Exchange, you see that we did have a little bit of a negative divergence on Wednesday, and that's primarily due to the initial sell-off on the open, and then it just reversed back up. And we also, we basically saw a little bit at the end of the day, 1.6 minus 1.6 up-down volume ratio in favor of the down volume. But the daily advance decline is only 392 more declining stock than advancing stock on Wednesday. But look at on Friday. Friday is really came up and it's 1824. So that means there's market participation, and also the up-down volume ratio was positive 4.65. So that's 4.65 to 1 in favor of the up volume. So that's a quite a broad market type of move on Friday. Compared to the previous Friday, remember we were saying that it kind of looked funny, that rally doesn't look right. But this Friday seems to be, look appropriate. Let me put it this way. And also looking at the New York Stock Exchange new high, new low, we see that the number of stock making new 52-week high outnumber the stock making new 52-week low on Friday by 33. And we see that the number of stock making new low is quite low. It's down in the double digit. So right now on Friday it was actually 24. But the new high is not coming up that much, but it is coming up a little bit. So we saw 57 on Friday. 57 stock make new 52-week high. Now looking at the cumulative AD line, we see that the cumulative AD line actually higher than this high here. And you notice that the S&P 500 is still close under this pivot high. Remember we're talking about this 5,800 level. So this is one of the market internal that is telling us to expect that the S&P 500 will move higher. And the probability is high for it to come up and at least tag this 5,800 level. because this is a positive divergence on the cumulative AD versus the S&P 500. So in order for this positive divergence to resolve is for the S&P 500 to come up and take out the previous pivot high. Right now, we are still seeing a positive divergence. That's one way to do it, right? The other way is for the S&P 500 to remain where it is to come down, and for the AD line to come down and make a negative divergence. But right now, it seems to be pointing toward that direction of coming up to this 5,800 level. Remember when we talk about this, when the market have that expectation of everybody eyeing on the same level or eyeing on the same thing, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So a lot of people is looking at this 5,800 level, and that's acting like a magnet, and it's going to pull the price up to that level. Now, we go after you attack that level, then that is to be seen. So just pay attention to this, and here's this, market internal. That's why it's important for us to look at the market internal, the pulse of the market, to see what is it actually telling us, what the market is planning to do. Now, it doesn't tell us when you're going to do it. It just tells us this is the expectation is to move up to that level. But it's when and how we're going to do it, we don't know. We just basically have to just monitor it and be prepared for it. And here, looking at the NASDAQ up-down volume ratio and also the daily AD, we see that Friday as well is a quite strong of a day as it moves up. And right now, we have over 2,000 more advancing issue on Friday than declining issue, and the up-down volume ratio is almost 4-to-1 in favor of the up volume. And also in the NASDAQ market, the numbers start making new 52-week high outnumber the numbers start making new 52-week low. So that's a positive, even though the number of stock making new 52-week high is not that high, but the amount of stock outnumber the 52-week low is a positive sign in any kind of market environment if you're bullish. And here we're seeing a little bit of a positive divergence, but not as obvious as the New York Stock Exchange AD line. But we see on the NASDAQ, see right here, it's putting up to this high, and that's basically is at this pivot high somewhere around this 20,300 area. Okay, but on Friday it's actually still below that point. So again, we're seeing a little bit of a positive divergence, and we could see the NASDAQ 100 come up and take out this pivot high, similarly to the S&P 500, that 5,000 level. So once again, the market is messages on what to expect, but it doesn't tell us when and how it's going to move out, because it could, we could pull back and fill this gap before it come up. You never know, right? Because anything could happen. It's just that the market internal, is telling us, the market generated information is telling us to expect, the possibility of coming up and take out this pivot high in the future. Doesn't tell us when. So overall, the market sentiment and the internal is turning a little bit more positive right now. And again, the key is that 5,800 level on the S&P 500. So depending on how it's going to react when it get up to that level will dictate where is the next big move going to be. So we just have to wait and see. But right now, be cautious about this 5,800 level and see what kind of reaction the market will display once we get there. So I hope you find this video to be useful and informative, and if you do, be sure to smash that thumbs up to help me promote this video. And if you're new to this channel and like to see more of these type of content, be sure to subscribe and help support this channel. In addition, if you'd like to see more content from me, go check out my newsletter, The Pulse of the Market, at substack.com. I have the link in the description below, and the link is smtraderCA.substack.com. Thank you for watching, and good luck on your trading.